The weather's moving towards fall. The ash are dropping their leaves. It's been rainy, it's cooling, and so we're trying to get the last of our potatoes harvested before the vines completely senesce and disappear, and they're hard to find. And I'm realizing there's some notes I can share here on how it works to grow potatoes in young Hugelmounds versus garden soil. The quick note is that young Hugelmounds seem to really promote voles and not potatoes. Very quick note on Hugelmounds. Most folks watching this channel would know what they are, but for those of you that don't, imagine a raised garden bed with a heart of woody debris, and internals, organs of woody debris. You can see here some older logs, there's sticks and whatnot, and then it's capped with soil. And the idea is that they collect water through the winter and make a sponge-like state that can have the soil be able to wick water in the summer. So here you can see a log buried under soil with some amaranth that we had harvested a little ways back. So that's the very rough idea of a Hugelmound. Here you can see one that's basically a raw sketch where we've laid all these sticks and various logs from old dead pines that had passed away. And then on the far north end, we're just beginning to start making the time as we dig ponds to get soil on top. So this is about a year or two away from even being ready to be planted. And in front of me here, the dark soil you see at the bottom was planted to potatoes in the spring. A couple big mistakes here. One is we planted the potatoes, and just to the south, I had seed for Sudan grass, which I thought would be a lovely biomass accumulator. I did not realize how big they would get. They did very well for themselves. I think they created a lot of shade and competition for the potatoes just to the north. So one bad design idea right there. And then as we're digging the potatoes out, you can see this is distinctly vole damage. Now, if we were really hungry, we could cut the green off of that and use the rest of the potato, but for the most part, this is pretty shot as far as food for us in the winter. Now, however, the trade-off is that the voles left all these little flecks and bits, and then it looks like earthworms are now eating those bits. So where we are not getting potatoes, we are getting beautiful crumbly worm castings and organic matter. So once this breaks down a little further, it should be an amazing garden bed. I think we'll put in the time. We'll cut back the Sudan grass tops to collect seed. And now we know for next year, this is a wonderful biomass and carbon producer, green manure, but way too big as a companion for potatoes. And I think we will try to go through and dig all the potatoes out. We don't want tons of flecks in there that can reroot for next year. I'd like to be able to transition this to something else. But overall, this is the pattern in a stick-laden garden bed, a young Hugelmound. The potatoes really started to have a happy life, and then were mainly eaten by voles. So that is what we're learning there. Definitely not a pattern we need to repeat next year. Ooh, there's a nice looking potato. Nope. Well, at least they had a lot of fun, hopefully. Hopefully it wasn't poisonous for them. Unfortunately, we did commit a lot of our seed potato to that context of, in the spirit of, ooh, let's build these Hugelmounds. It'll be a good reason to bring soil to them to hill the potatoes through the summer. We'll get a yield of potatoes in exchange for accelerating the Hugelmounds. You know, on paper or in the mind, that makes sense, but in practice, it seems like it didn't. Here we see a context that actually yielded pretty nicely for us. Juan and I dug this all out yesterday. We collected, I would guess, around 130 or so pounds of potatoes from this bed. There was some vole activity in there, but for the most part, this was turned soil in the spring, planted to potatoes and dug up with just a little bit of wood here or there. Where there were logs and woody debris in this bed, there's a higher incidence of voles eating potatoes. So very, very clear pattern there. It just looks like a pile of weeds, but this is another bed that was all planted to potatoes that we have not started digging out. It's going to be interesting to see. This is like an intersection between standard garden soil and a Hugelmound because it's got all this woody debris right nearby. And so did that create a safe context for the voles to hide out? It's a mixed bag. So little damage. This is a perfectly fine potato for us to harvest and put on the shelf as seed. Since it's so green, we wouldn't want to eat them. That could have been fixed if we had hilled them more. Here's one that got, I don't know, somebody took a little jackhammer to that one. We'll let that be compost. But yeah, I can see in here a mix of nice potatoes and some damage. Very, very clear pattern for sure. We harvested potatoes from this context recently, and I would say that this again is closer to garden soil. It's a permanent raised bed. It had some woody bits here or there, but in this case, this entire interior was seeded to bronze fennel, which is incredibly aromatic. This is going to be for nursery sales. Really beautiful plant in here. It's first year seedlings. Such intense aromatics, I think, were pretty repellent to the voles. And so the potatoes that were planted on the side of this relatively young-ish Hugelmound grew pretty nicely and had very little damage. So it seems like if we're going to do potatoes in association with the young Hugelmound, strong aromatics, mints and alliums and things like that would be pretty helpful. More potatoes dug up on the side of this bed. The lump in the middle is woody debris. You can see again, very, very young. So what I think the takeaway, well, beyond the clear one that I've said over and over, is we won't do potatoes at scale next to woody debris. Luckily, it's all saved seed, so there wasn't really much risk there, and it's going to create really beautiful soil. But what we're seeing is that in the same context where the potatoes are eaten so intensely, where we seeded brassicas, so in this case, purple top turnips, and there's wood right there, lots of vole activity possible. In fact, there's one that got eaten by a vole, but not much. Well, not much of the other ones. But daikons and turnips, radishes, seem like a really nice element to add to a system when a Hugelmound is first getting set up and you want to collect a yield from it. Skip the potatoes and go for storage roots like turnips, radishes, maybe beets, although I feel like I've seen them eat some of the beets. But there'll be a whole bunch of pounds of really nice, beautiful turnips in here, and right next to logs, right next to a really young pile. Always so much more to learn, always so many more mistakes to make. It's really good to be transparent and real with them, explain what you think you learned, and be open to the idea that maybe it's something else that's going on. But I'm happy to share that note with folks so that maybe you can avoid losing lots of potatoes, especially if you're growing from seed that you purchased or it's really valuable or very finite. And think more about pungent aromatic brassica roots next to young Hugelmounds, maybe some squash and the like instead of potatoes. Anyways, share some notes. What has worked really well for you with freshly laid up Hugelmounds that you're trying to have mature and deepen and turn into beautifully productive spaces, but you'd also like to collect a yield from in year 1 and year 2? What are some solutions that you've figured out that work well? What have you tried that has been an abysmal failure, and what did you learn from that? Let's all have some fun dialogue and keep learning about building long-lived permanent raised beds with no tillage in landscapes that have woody overstories. It's a great system. It's just about patience for sure. I guess that's true with all the things. Thanks for watching.